Good morning, it's Matt here with Semper Fly, and was looking at some AOPA news the other day, and I saw an article about the recent FAA Reauthorization bill. Congress, every so many years, usually 5-year increments, signs a big bill which reauthorizes FAA to conduct business, and they usually stick in a bunch of particular directions for things they want to tell the FAA to do that the FAA hasn't done on their own. And there are some things in this year's bill which are generally good for general aviation and touch on a few things I talked about recently here, like basic med. So I thought I'd roughly go over what's going on right now. This is the second week of June 2023. There's two bills going through, one in the House and one in the Senate. They're pretty similar and they address a couple different areas. And the first area of this is basic med. Now, I did a video a few weeks ago about the basics of medical certification for airplanes like this, and one of them I talked about was basic med. Well, basic med has been generally a success. There are certainly people flying under basic med that were not flying under a third class. Now, it's kind of curious what exactly their medical situation is, because there's not really a medical condition that you can fly under basic med that you can't fly under third class, but the forms being different, it being easier in some respects, especially if you don't have quick access to an AME. If you have a cooperative primary care provider who will help you do the forms, there is at least a perception that it's easier to get a medical certification through basic med than through a traditional third class. The result is there are thousands of pilots flying under basic med. That's perceived to be a good thing, so they're tinkering a little bit with the basic med allowable aircraft. Previous basic med rule was an aircraft with 6 seats up to 5 passengers. That's been increased to 7 seats, 6 passengers. They also increased the weight limit from 6,000 pounds up to 12,500. Not really sure what airplane fits in there, but I guess if you had a large airplane with 7 seats, you can now fly it under basic med, whereas before you couldn't. So that's certainly an improvement. I don't think that meets a lot of pilots, but if it helps some, great. One other area about basic med they're attempting to do is they want the FAA to foster a dialogue with other countries to get them to accept basic med certification, namely Canada, so that you can fly outside of the country under basic med a little more allowable than you can today. Currently, there are certain conditions that your AME, your aviation medical examiner, is not allowed to approve. He has to forward your application on to Oklahoma City, where the FAA's medical staff looks at it. This can be a lengthy delay. Some people will sit and wait 6 months, 9 months, even longer before they hear back from the FAA about an approval of their special issuance or approval of their medical certificate. Congress wants to force the FAA to allow AMEs to approve more medical conditions at that initial appointment and reduce the amount of processes that have to be sent off to Oklahoma City. They also direct the FAA to look more into some conditions that are to a certain degree disqualifying, such as depression, mental illness, anxiety, ADHD, and things like that, that for a long time were automatically disqualifying. Now they've opened them up to a certain degree for special issuance, and they want the FAA to continue to look at opening up those conditions for more people can fly under a third class of those conditions. So it's a step in the right direction. There's an old joke: do you want your airline pilot who's depressed taking medication and still flying, or not taking medication and still flying? So anything we move in that direction, I think, is a benefit. There are some other countries, I think Australia for one, that has much less restrictive rules about depression and anxiety being a disqualifying condition. So the FAA continues to move in that direction. Another area in both bills is getting attention is they're drastically increasing, almost doubling from just over $500 million to almost $1 billion for general aviation airport improvement, mainly hangars. There is a huge hangar shortage in this country. I read every month on my Cub pages on the internet about people selling their Cub because they can't find a hangar. I couldn't keep this airplane outside. I just wouldn't feel right about it. But some places, like near me in Clearwater, a hangar, enclosed hangar, is over $700 a month. Even in a rural area where I am in Central Florida, an enclosed hangar could very easily be $400 or $500 a month. It's kind of hard to justify spending $9,000 a year to keep your $30,000 airplane in a hangar. At a certain point, you park it outside, and the money you save from the hangar, you recover it every 5 years. But there's a huge shortage of hangars, and they're trying to push a lot of money into the public use airports to build hangars. As you might know or might not know, public use airports in this country, which is where most airports that people fly from are still largely funded by the FAA. The FAA gives grants for hangars, runways, all kinds of things, to encourage the airport to stay public use and to increase the infrastructure. And this is a big increase in the amount of funding that's going to these airports to hopefully increase air infrastructure, namely hangars. Hangars has always been a big issue. It's part of the reason I moved, and it's one reason why I drive 45 minutes to my airplane, because I'm not going to pay $700 for a hangar closer to my house. Another area that the bills address is in the FAA registration process. Airplanes don't really have titles like cars or boats. The ownership is basically tracked through the FAA by way of registration. You buy an airplane, you pay money, and you fill out an application to change your registration, and that goes off to the FAA. You keep your copy of the request for change as your registration until your new registration comes in. The FAA has been in the situation of people flying longer than they were originally intended under an application for registration because they're backed up in issuing registrations. You've also had the problem of not updating the registration database. For instance, most people who fly in aviation know who John and Martha King are. It's a husband and wife couple. They've been around a long time, and they have a huge company that does educational videos and flight training videos and ground school courses and things like that. So John and Martha got pulled out of their airplane at gunpoint thinking they had stolen a Citation jet. Come to find out that their airplane wasn't stolen, but that N number had previously, many years before, been assigned to a different airplane that at that time was stolen, and the FAA had never removed that N number from the database as being stolen, even though it had been reissued to a new airplane. So the bill is trying to force the FAA to have a time limit, perhaps as short as 10 days, to respond to FAA requests for registration changes, so that the system is more accurate, and when you see an airplane on a ramp and run the N number, you have a decent chance of actually seeing who owns the airplane. Or if you buy one, you're not grounded because you're expected to fly beyond what is allowed under a temporary application for registration. Another area that's trying to be cleared up in the bill is a quirky rule that came out in the last couple of years regarding flight instruction. The FAA has rules regarding flight instructors and how long their certificates and what type of aircraft, especially in regards to experimentals they can instruct in. For a long time, there was this unwritten rule in experimentals that unless you were leasing the airplane, you could hire a flight instructor to fly with you in your experimental, and that was not commercial use, which experimentals are not allowed to do. Several years ago, the FAA came out and said that they were now interpreting their rule that flight instructor was commercial use, and it basically kept anybody from having an experimental aircraft and getting flight instruction in it, which was a horribly bad idea as far as safety is concerned. The FAA, another bill that the President signed last December, and this current bill is attempting to straighten it out and allow flight instructors to work in these different situations about ownership and airworthiness certificate without having to get what's called a LODA, a letter of deviation authority. Because what was happening was you were having to go to the FAA, ask for a letter allowing you to deviate from the regs to give instruction in an RV-7. It was a stupid interpretation, and both of these bills are trying to fix the FAA's incorrect interpretation of their own rules. In recent years, there has been a great deal of effort put into finding a replacement for 100-octane low lead. Just a brief primer, you remember, if you're my age, when cars used to run on leaded gas. The EPA back in the 70s banned the use of leaded gas. They gave the FAA an exemption for that rule because most airplanes were not certified to run on unleaded gas in their airplane engines. So the FAA allowed airports to continue to sell low lead, 100-octane low lead, or avgas for lack of a better term, since the 1970s. Various people have tried to find a replacement for 100 low lead that made the engines happy and made the FAA happy. Problem is, comparatively speaking, there's not a lot of avgas sold as compared to the other types of gas, so there was not a whole lot of interest. The problem is, to put gas other than 100 low lead into an airplane engine, that airplane engine has to be approved to run that fuel. So once the FAA approves the fuel, you now have to get say you have a Lycoming 320, you have to make sure that the paperwork exists that your 320 is legal to run on this new fuel. The end result is there's not a real good system as of yet that there's going to be gas out there that's as a day-to-day replacement for 100 low lead. Congress is ordering the FAA to basically force airport to continue to have 100 octane low lead available at least until 2030 or until another fuel is readily available. If you want to hear more about this, go to avweb.com page, avweb.com. There's a guy on there who owns a Piper Cub and does a lot of Piper Cub videos. He's got a video series he did last year that goes into great detail about trying to find a replacement for 100 low lead. Tells you a lot more than you might want to know about dieseling and pre-detonation and a whole bunch of things about why it's an issue. But for our purposes, the FAA is telling airports you need to keep carrying 100 low lead at least till 2030 or until we get this other fuel online. Generally speaking, all these changes are good for general aviation. It looks like these bills have good support and should make it all the way through and get signed. More hangars, a replacement for 100 LL, more basic med, all those are good things. So thanks for watching the video. Keep flying.